Stowe.
Good morning. On September 23rd, 2017, at 9:53 p.m., Kalia Claire McNabb came into this world weighing 6 pounds and 6 ounces. She was a little premature, but otherwise a healthy baby. The evidence will show that just 14 days later, her father, Christopher Michael McNabb, ended her life so abruptly and with such teeth came through her gums and into her tongue. You'll hear that she was then later left out in the woods, wrapped in clothes and a blanket. She was stuffed into a bag. She was put under a log, in a hole, and left out for strangers to find. The evidence will also show that Courtney Bell was too busy smoking methamphetamine to protect her child. You'll hear that during the 14 days that Kalia was alive, Courtney and Chris had her maybe 4 or 5 of those days. And during those days, they would drop her off with family members during that time. You'll hear from Megan Sorrells, who is one of her cousins who Kalia was going back and forth to. The first thing that you'll hear today, or one of the first things that you'll hear today, is a 911 call from October 7th of 2017. And Courtney Bell will say that her baby is gone. You'll hear that the last time that she saw her 14-day-old was at 5 a.m. And when she woke up at 10:30, the child was missing. You'll hear she called her friend Missy, who came and helped her look. You'll also hear that Chris then runs into the woods. He runs into the woods to look for his 14-day-old baby. You'll hear from multiple first responders, the deputies that came out on the scene at first. You'll hear that Christopher McNabb showed up about 40 minutes after they had been on scene. You'll hear that he was wet and muddy from going through those woods. You'll hear from different family members of Courtney Bell, and the reason I put this up here is to sort of give you an idea of how this is going to play out. There's a lot of different names here. There's a lot of different people who are related, so this is hopefully going to make sense as we go throughout the day. You'll hear from Tim Bell, Courtney's father. You'll hear 911 calls from about 5 days before the baby went missing, where Courtney and Chris and Tim were having a disagreement over the children. Tim didn't feel that they were safe where they were, so he wanted to take them back. You'll hear from crime scene technicians and investigators about the steps that they took to find baby Kalia and the steps that they took after finding her body in that drawstring bag. You'll hear that both defendants were interviewed. Listen closely to those interviews and listen to the changes throughout them and the inconsistencies. You're going to hear that eventually they narrow that time frame, the time frame that they at first said they saw her at 5 a.m. and she was gone at 10:30. You'll hear them narrow that down to about a 30-minute time frame of when that baby could have gone missing. 30 minutes of broad daylight when that baby went missing. You'll hear from people who are riding in the car with Courtney and Chris the next day, when Courtney gets a call that the baby's been found. And at that moment, Chris jumps out of the car and runs. He says, "They're going to think I did it." You're going to see some Facebook records that show conversations between Courtney and Chris, the co-defendants here, and you're also going to see conversations between Chris and a woman that he was talking to the morning that his child went missing, during a time when he says he was asleep. You're going to hear from the medical examiner, and she will explain to you the type of injury that this baby had to her head. She'll explain to you the type of force that was necessary to inflict this injury. I expect that throughout this trial there's going to be some people that you don't like. You're going to see that Chris and Courtney weren't living the most savory lifestyle. They were surrounding the people that they were around are not going to be people that most people would have a 14-day-old baby around. But we're not going to sugarcoat anything for you. We're going to show you exactly how this baby was living. I expect that you'll hear from Courtney's mother, who you'll find out real quick is never going to win Mother of the Year award. But what I ask you to do is put those emotions aside and the frustrations with the people aside and listen to the evidence. Look at the physical evidence and listen to the words of those two defendants. Listen to how their stories change and use your common sense. Christopher McNabb is charged, as the judge has already stated, with 1 count of malice murder. Okay, that's for intentionally or unlawfully and with malice aforethought, which will be explained later down the road, caused the death of Kalia McNabb by inflicting blunt force trauma to her head. He's then charged with 2 counts of felony murder, and those are basically charged as during the commission of a felony offense that he did cause the death of Kalia McNabb. The 2 separate felonies are aggravated battery and cruelty to children in the 1st degree. Aggravated battery is described or is charged as maliciously causing bodily harm by rendering Kalia McNabb's brain useless. And cruelty to children is charged as causing cruel and excessive physical pain by inflicting blunt force trauma to her head. He's also charged with 1 count of murder in the 2nd degree. And that's by inflicting those injuries to her head that he did that with negligence, which is different from murder in the 2nd degree. He's also charged with 1 count of cruelty to children in the 2nd degree for negligently causing cruel and excessive physical pain. Lastly, he's charged with concealing the death of another, and that's that he did unlawfully conceal the death of Kalia McNabb, which hindered the discovery of whether or not said person was unlawfully killed, for hiding her inside of that hole, inside of a bag. Now, Courtney Bell is charged with 1 count of murder in the 2nd degree. As I explained earlier, that's negligently causing the death through committing the act of cruelty to children in the 2nd degree. And cruelty to children in the 2nd degree is, again, that she negligently allowed Kalia to suffer cruel and excessive physical pain. She's lastly charged with deprivation of a minor, or contributing to the deprivation of a minor, where she did unlawfully fail to provide proper parental care or control for Kalia McNabb, and such that without adequate supervision necessary for child's well-being, and the said act resulted in that child's death. As you sit here, I encourage you to take notes on those notepads that you have, because the court reporter can't go back in the room with you and read back everything that we've talked about. I know on TV they'll say, read back for me what so-and-so has said. Well, that doesn't happen here. You won't get to go back with the transcripts. There's going to be a lot of names. There are a lot of people in this case. So I encourage you to use those notepads and take notes and pay attention to what's going on out here, because when you go back in there, you'll be left with your collective memories and what you've written down and what you can remember from what happened out here. Today is the day that you hear the case against Christopher McNabb and Courtney Bell. But it's also the day that you're hearing the case of Kalia Claire McNabb. I ask that you give this case the attention that it needs and deserves, and I suggest to you that at the conclusion of this case, based upon the physical evidence you have, the testimony of the witnesses, and the interviews of the defendants, the state will carry its burden and prove this case to beyond a reasonable doubt. And at that time, Ms. Zahn will come back up here and ask you to find the defendants guilty on all counts. Thank you.
Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Judge.